I'm like now thinking this through. I don't think I've answered this question before. But good question. I haven't been asked that before. So I think that the right way to handle a situation like that would have been to probably say it was, nobody's business and to resign,
Monica Lewinsky is getting candid about how she believes former President Bill Clinton should have handled the fallout from their relationship scandal. Lewinsky gained international attention in 1998 after news broke of her nearly 2-year affair with the US president, which had started when she was 22 years old. The anti-bullying advocate joined Alex Cooper on the February 26th episode of Call Her Daddy, where she spoke about that time in her life and recalled the day the world found out.
Just to reel it back a few days, I found out about the investigation several days before the rest of the world did. There was a sting operation that happened at a shopping mall. And then I was there was a Ritz-Carlton attached to the shopping mall. And I was in the hotel room really realizing that what felt like my life was over. Certainly my life was going to change and that I was threatened with jail and essentially told if I didn't cooperate and wear a wire that I would go to jail for 27 years. So,
oh my God.
And so I kind of saw this train starting to barrel down the tracks. And I really felt like the January 21st, opening the door. I was living in the Watergate apartment complex with my mom. And so I remember opening the door. And these were in the days where people would get a newspaper delivered. And in DC, it was always several, like the Post and the New York Times. And I remember seeing my name above the fold and in the investigation and looking down the hall and seeing the exact same newspaper outside everybody else's door. And it was shocking. It was terrifying. And I didn't actually know how to process anything. And really it was a moment where life as I knew it was over.
Monica and Alex discussed the media frenzy and how it affected Monica at the time.
The media attention, there's paparazzi outside at all times. Like, what were you doing every day? Like, were you going stir crazy?
Oh, yeah. I mean, first I was obsessed with the case. I think too, just to paint a little bit of a landscape of what the media life was like, because we have a sense of how things are today with the how we could get inundated with a story online with social media. Now there are 8 bajillion outlets. But what it meant back then was this story was actually, instead of a story having legs for a week, which is considered a long time in today's world. Yes. I mean, it was a year, it was a year of coverage. In the first 10 days of the investigation, the Washington Post alone had published 127 articles. So that's like 12 articles a day on just this story. So that was one news outlet, and this was global.
Can you explain initially, once this all broke, how right off the bat was the media portraying you?
Oh, I think for 5 seconds, it was sympathetic. And maybe after about a week, once the White House got in gear, I was very quickly painted as a stalker, a whore, mentally unstable, a bimbo, both the pursuer in this and also not attractive enough to be pursued. And really there was a creation of a version of me that I didn't recognize and my friends and family didn't recognize. And that's what happens when you have a power imbalance in a story where media is so integral to it unfolding.
The 51-year-old also shared her conflicting feelings at the time on Bill Clinton's infamous line during a press conference addressing the scandal, in which he falsely said, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman." Clinton was later acquitted in his impeachment trial for charges of lying under oath and obstruction of justice.
In the moment, I was split because I felt so guilty. I felt so guilty for everything. I felt like this having become public was my fault.
Why?
Because I had confided in Linda. And so if I had not confided in her, I felt as if this wouldn't have become public. And so there was an enormous amount of guilt. I didn't want him to lose his job. So there was a part of me that felt, good, deny it. This is what you should do, that sort of a thing. And then there was a part of me that was so humiliated, and to kind of have the most powerful man in the world saying that, basically your damaged goods, is not something you want as a 51-year-old woman, and not something you want as a 24-year-old woman.
The activist detailed how difficult it was to move on from the scandal, sharing that she didn't recognize how much she had lost until she was getting turned down to interview for job opportunities after graduate school. She also noted that there were times she thought about changing her name, though decided against it as she questioned how practical that really would be.
Everything from I wasn't even allowed to go interview certain places. Like a place would say, no, we don't. You can't even come interview, even though I was qualified, to because it was 2007 when I was job hunting. I was, and then Hillary was running in 2008. So there was this high likelihood that she would become president, or could get the nomination. So I think at that point she was expected to get the nomination, but of course Barack Obama did. So at this period of time when I am job hunting, people were saying, well, could you get a letter of indemnity? I can never say this. I had Bell's palsy a few years ago. So sometimes, so sometimes some words are still a little hard for me, but asked me if I could get a letter of indemnification. If they hired me, because they relied on grants. And so they were worried that they would lose all their funding. So it was, there were a couple places that, were interested to hire me, but would be like, well, you'd be interacting with the media. So, I mean, it's just,
Was there ever a point that not that you should, but was there ever a point that you or anyone in your family thought of changing your name or your last name at all?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there was definitely a period of time that I contemplated it, except given the world we lived in, I couldn't even see a reality of that, right? Like, how is that really going to work, right? I'm going to walk down the street in LA where I was raised and run into someone and they'll say Monica, and I'll, oh, my name is Rebecca now. I mean, like, I didn't even know how that would work. Or people had suggested to me, well, you could put a different name on your CV. And I thought about that. But then, when you play that forward, so what, I'm going to walk into a job interview. The person in their head is like, that girl looks a lot like Monica Lewinsky. And, and they're looking at me and I'm looking at them.
Lewinsky shared where she stands now and how she views her relationship with the former president after previously having conflicting thoughts on it.
In 2014, you said the relationship was consensual. In 2018, you said you were just reevaluating how power dynamics impact consent. Now, today, where do you stand?
It's really still, I kind of landed in the place that I landed in 2018, okay, which was this sense of, I'm very clear this was not sexual assault. And therefore there's a level of consensuality that was there. And at the same time, because of the power dynamics and the power differential, I never should have been in that position. And so that's where you just can't even, I think that you can't even understand what you're walking into.
Right.
And that's where it's the responsibility of the person with more power. And that power can be age, it can be their job, it can be their financial resources, there could be myriad reasons that they have the tilt towards the power that way.
Alex later asked the 51-year-old her thoughts on how, looking back, she thinks the aftermath should have been handled by the White House and the media, a question that Lewinsky admitted she's never gotten before.
How do you think it should have been handled? Have you thought about that?
Oh my gosh. I think that he should have said, I'm like now thinking this through. I don't think I've answered this question before. But good question. I haven't been asked that before. So I think that the right way to handle a situation like that would have been to probably say it was, nobody's business and to resign, or to find a way of staying in office that was not lying and not throwing a young person who was just starting out in the world under the bus. And at the same time, I'm hearing myself say that. And it's like, okay, but we're also talking about the most powerful office in the world, So I don't want to be naive either.
The advocate also revealed that she has received some apologies.
You made many public apologies. Have you ever received one in return?
I have had a handful of people who were involved at the time that I've run into in different ways who have acknowledged that they wish they had made different choices. None of the people who were, sort of the above the fold names involved in the investigation. And I'm really grateful that I'm at a place where I don't need it anymore.
Towards the end of the duo's conversation, Monica shared that her dating life had been complicated at times, though also said she's dated some amazing men. Alex ended the interview by asking the activist what she would say to her younger self now.
If you could go back and talk to your 22-year-old self, what would you tell her?
Do not go to Washington.
Monica, thank you so much for coming on Call Her Daddy.
Thank you, Alex.